Number 1. The Toy Aisle. I definitely want this story to be anonymous, as it is easily the scariest and worst thing that has ever happened to me. This happened nearly 30 years ago, and even today I have not fully come to terms with it. Right now I'm 38 years old, but when this happened I was only 9. My mom, my older brother, and myself were out on a Saturday evening. We were going to Kmart to do some shopping for school. My brother was 15 years old at the time. My mom had put some items on layaway and needed to make a payment on them. At the time we had gotten there was a really long line at the layaway. She wasn't able to come back later as the payment was due that day. While we were waiting, my brother was getting antsy. He asked my mom if he could take me to go and look at the toys. She agreed and we went. My brother, though, quickly lost interest in showing me the toys when he saw a few cute girls. He tried to drag me off to the girls, but I was 9 and had no interest. He agreed to let me stay in the toy aisle and look at toys while he went off to see the girls. I was looking at some He-Man toys when I noticed a man come into the aisle, and he began looking at me. I didn't think much about it at first. I figured he could be there to buy something for his kids. He was looking at the toys at the far end of the aisle, and every now and then he would glance over at me. Each time then he would go back and look at the toys. He kept creeping closer and closer to me, following that same pattern. I guess I should have been more alarmed, but I really didn't think I was in any danger. I had been by myself in the Kmart before. The man slowly crept closer and closer to me. He would pick up a toy, look at it for a while, put it down, and then move closer to me. When he was right beside me, he picked up a Skeletor toy and was looking at it. He then said to me, "Hey kid, do you have a Skeletor?" I shook my head. "No, I don't." He showed the toy to me. "Want me to buy it for you?" he asked. "Just come up with me to the registers and I'll buy it for you." I again shook my head. "No thank you," I replied. "I'm supposed to wait here for my brother to come back." "Don't worry about it, kid," he assured me. "I can buy the toy for you and get you back here before your brother comes back." Uncomfortable, I again shook my head. "I really shouldn't. Thank you anyway." The guy didn't give up, however. He really seemed intent on trying to get me to go with him. I kept wishing that my brother would come back to the toy aisle, or that at the very least that another adult would come into the aisle. This man would just not leave me alone. It got worse when he kept inching closer and closer to me, and he eventually put his hand on my shoulder. My immediate impulse was to jerk away from him, but I stopped when I felt him put his arm on my back, and I felt him press an object, which I assumed was a knife, into my back. I'm surprised I didn't piss myself right then and there. I was scared to death, and I wanted to run, but I was certain that if I did run, the man would kill me with the knife. "Well, you could have had the toy," the man told me. "Now you're going to come with me, and you're not going to make a sound if you don't want this knife in your neck." The man pushed me forward, and I had to walk forward with him. It was difficult because my entire body felt fuzzy and weird. I couldn't even feel my hands and my feet. I did begin to cry just a little bit, and this angered the man. "Hold those tears in, or you're going to be in pain." He made this point by pressing the tip of the blade, which was concealed in the sleeve of his jean jacket, into my back. I didn't think I was going to die. At least not yet. I did think, though, that this man was going to take me away. I would never see my family again. And I had no idea what he would do to me before he killed me. But there was no doubt in my mind that he would eventually kill me. I didn't want to cry because I didn't want him to hurt me, but I was so scared that I just couldn't help it. Tears began falling down my cheek. I was then hit from behind, and I fell hard onto the ground. I started bawling because I thought that the man must have gotten pissed off at me and he must have stabbed me. But then, through the tears, I saw my 15-year-old football player brother on top of the guy who was kidnapping me, absolutely wailing on the guy. He had tackled him from behind and was completely beating him to a pulp. Some security guys came over shortly, and they pulled my brother off the guy. He explained pretty quickly that the creeper was trying to kidnap me. The security took my brother, me, and the kidnapper into their back office, and then they paged my mother. The man got arrested. He was eventually convicted. My brother probably saved my life. He still got in trouble for leaving me alone to begin with, though. But even though my mom was pissed off at him, and I guess that I should have been too, but I really was just appreciative of what he did. Number 2. The walk home. When I was in high school, I tended to spend a lot of time over at my best friend Tim's house. He lived on the other side of the neighborhood. After school, I would walk back to his house with him, and we'd play video games all evening and well into the night. Then, when it got pretty late, I would walk back home across the neighborhood. I lived in a small town, so although there really weren't many people out late at night when I was walking, I never got too worried. It was a small town. Nothing bad ever happens in a small town, right? So walking home at night alone was no big deal. But one day in the fall, it became a big deal. It normally took me about half an hour to walk from Tim's house to my own. I had to walk up through the main street of town, which was generally pretty deserted. All the stores, all the shops closed down around 5-6 o'clock in the evening. Although occasionally I would see someone while walking home, it was never anyone that I was worried about. It would be a teenager or an older woman, for example. But on this day, as I walked over the train tracks by the post office, I saw someone sitting in the parking lot at the post office. He was just sitting on the ground. He was wearing a hoodie, so I couldn't get a really good look at him. I was looking over at him, though, and I guess I looked too long because he caught me looking at him. I quickly averted my gaze, as people often do when they are caught looking at somebody else. I didn't think it was a big deal, though. I mean, that sort of thing happens all the time. But I did begin to worry a little bit when the man got to his feet and began walking out of the parking lot and towards the sidewalk. Fortunately, though, he was across the street from me. Unfortunately, he kept looking at me as I walked along. Unnerved, I tried walking a bit faster. When I did, though, the man across the street would begin to walk faster too. He kept looking at me, and he was keeping pace with me. But at no point did he actually try to cross the street. He just kept pace. The road through town was quite a long one, and our semi-encounter had happened at the beginning of the road. I actually had to walk the length of the road, and then make a right turn when the road ended. But it seemed obvious that this man was either following or at least trying to keep pace with me. I decided to take a bit of a gamble and make a left turn on an earlier road. If I did, I could walk around the block and still get to where I was going. It was down a darker street than the main road, but there was a chance I could lose the guy. When I got to where I wanted, I suddenly turned and walked down that road. A quick glance behind showed that the man just continued to walk forward. I was so relieved that he hadn't followed me. I didn't even mind that the road I was on now was much darker. I made it to the road that I originally would have had to turn on. There was still no sign of the guy, so I got to the sidewalk and made the turn to cross the road. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the guy come at me fast from the side of the building. Immediately, I knew that he had headed me off at the pass, so to speak. Unfortunately, he caught me by surprise and he tackled me to the ground. He didn't hit me though. He just held me to the ground, pinning me. He smelled revolting and he just had a crazy look in his eyes. As I sat there, struggling to get away, he held me down with no problem. Then he spit right in my face. Then he began raving like a lunatic, telling me that I had thought I was better than him, that I didn't know what it was like to have a rough life, and he kept calling me JJ for some reason. He was talking to me like he knew who I was. I couldn't get away from the guy. He was much bigger than me. He had the leverage too. Plus, I was panicked. He grabbed me by the neck and began strangling me. I struggled, and he began shaking me. My head hit the pavement, and then again, and then again, and I lost consciousness. Next thing I knew, I was in the hospital. Apparently, I had been found in a pool of my own blood on the sidewalk. The guy who had attacked me was nowhere to be found. I had a concussion, and my shoulder was fractured. All I could guess was that maybe this crazy guy thought he had killed me or something, and he left. I had a long recovery psychologically. Although I never saw the guy again, I thought I saw him all the time. I thought I saw him every time I went for a walk. I thought I saw him looking in my bedroom window every night. I thought he was always there watching me, and each time, I swore that I really saw him. I still see him today. Number 3. The Roommate. When I was 19 years old, I got into a bit of a fight with my stepfather. It was a long time ago, but even now, I think I was more in the right than he was. He was a bit of an asshole, and ever since he moved in, he tried his best to get me and my brother out of the house. He, however, bent over backwards to make sure that my sister could stay as long as she wanted. But I digress. As a result of the fight, I had to find a roommate pretty quickly. There was no way that I could afford to get a place all by myself. After a few weeks of looking, I found a roommate in Chicago, renting a room that I knew I could afford. I was lucky to also find someone that I think I would get along with just fine. This guy named TJ. Like me, he was an actor. We liked the same types of movies. We just had a lot of things in common. When I moved in, it didn't take me very long to realize that I had completely misjudged TJ. Even though I was paying as much as he was in rent, he constantly lorded it over me that since I was not on the lease, that it was his apartment and not mine. When I had moved in, we had agreed upon a set of rules which I had thought were really fair, but I hadn't been there for more than a week when he began amending the rules to be much more in his favor than mine. He became sullen, and although I technically kept to myself, he would groan whenever I got home from work. It was as if he thought me being there was an inconvenience. However, it wasn't an inconvenience when I gave him the rent check. I had been talking to a friend of mine named John, who had insisted that I should just move out. I was completely unhappy there, and he just wanted me to leave. I told him that I was way too nervous about approaching TJ about wanting to leave, when it was only a month into my living there. John told me that I shouldn't tell him that I was leaving. I should just take my things and leave overnight or when he was at school. I couldn't see myself doing that, though. The straw that broke the camel's back was one night when TJ tried to get me involved in a threesome with someone he had over. I was sort of disgusted at the idea, and I just told him that I wasn't interested. He treated me as if I was the bad person at this point, and he completely held it against me. I should have taken John's advice and moved out while TJ was at school. But for some reason I just couldn't bring myself to do that to somebody. But I didn't want to really face him either. So instead, like an idiot, I wrote a note. I took the note and I put it on TJ's bed, telling him that I was giving him 30 days and I was moving out. I then went to bed. In the middle of the night, I was woken up by TJ pounding on my bedroom door. I had the door locked and he was demanding that I let him in. I refused since it was obvious that he was angry. He was pounding and screaming. I went to pick up the phone because I thought that maybe I should call the police. However, before I had a chance, he actually broke down the door. I dropped the phone in surprise. TJ ran over to the bed and grabbed onto my shirt and began screaming in my face. He was telling me that I would have to keep paying half of the rent for as long as he wanted me to, and all sorts of other stuff. I was still lying in my bed. He then slammed me hard up against the wall, and I hit my head against it. My senses went all fuzzy for a moment. Before I knew what was going on, he grabbed a glass of water off of my nightstand and threw it at me, hitting me square on the forehead, shattering the glass. Both myself and the bed were completely covered in shattered glass, and I was too woozy to really react. Well, TJ's rage just pushed him on. While I was trying to recover, he grabbed me again and began strangling me. Although I was woozy, I knew I had to do something lest this psychopath was going to kill me. So I reached up and punched him in the nose. I had no leverage, but I think he was shocked that I punched him and he let me go. I then got up off the glass-covered bed and decided the best thing was to try and get out of the house. I made it all the way out into the hallway before he grabbed me from behind. My fight or flight reversed its decision, and I turned around and punched him 3 times right in the nose. He fell on his ass and I ran outside of the apartment. I had to call the police to escort me into the apartment to move my things out. Since there was no witness to the event, the police said it was TJ's word against mine. It irritated me because the jerk should have gone to jail for what he did. Hell, when I told the police officers about the glass, he had the audacity to say I threw the glass. Then why was my bed covered in glass? I don't know. Well, afterwards, I was able to find an efficiency apartment for a cheap price that I could move into alone. I really should have taken my friend John's advice and just left while TJ was at school. Hey y'all, Killer Orange Cat here. If you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please hit the button next to the tabby so you'll be informed of new content. Please feel free to share this video with others, and follow Ichigo and myself on Facebook and Twitter. If you have a story you'd like narrated by me, please email me at the address provided in the description. Over the past couple weeks, I've tried to help a few other channels get noticed. After I've given some shoutouts, I know that at least a few of you have checked out the other channels. For that, I really thank you. But for now, I only ask that you make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a killer orange cat might be hiding. Good night.